Hey guys, tonight we're cracking open a can of something truly historic and a little sparkly. We're heading back to a time when America's favorite soda wasn't just sweet, it was medicated. That's right. Tonight's story begins in the early 20th century, when every child in America was basically on lithium, thanks to 7-Up. Yes, the same 7-Up you now associate with hangovers, airplane cups, and your grandmother's Jell-O salad once came laced with a mood-stabilizing drug strong enough to make Freud take notes. So before you get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and whether you've ever accidentally self-medicated with caffeine, nostalgia, or 3 consecutive sodas before bed. Now, dim those lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Get comfortable, maybe grab a drink, preferably one not containing lithium carbonate. Because tonight we're diving into a story so fizzy, so absurd, and so distinctly American, you can almost taste the corporate irresponsibility. Let's get curious for a second. Have you ever wondered why your grandparents called soda tonic? Or how soft drinks used to promise both eternal happiness and strong bones? Did people really believe a carbonated drink could cure depression? And what happens when the beverage industry decides to play pharmacist? Most importantly, how did we go from lithium-laced lemon-lime elixirs to diet sodas that can dissolve a nail? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1929. The Great Depression is about to start. Everyone's anxious, and someone, somewhere, is bottling a bubbly drink that says, "Don't worry, we've got your mental health covered in a 12-ounce bottle." It's the late 1800s, and America is in love with science, or at least the version of it that involves fizzy water and untested chemistry. Pharmacies are the Silicon Valley of the day, and every apothecary is brewing miracle tonics that promise to cure everything from indigestion to heartbreak. You walk in for a headache and walk out with something that would later be classified as Schedule 1. You can picture it now. A polished oak counter gleaming beneath the soft glow of gas lamps, shelves lined with glass bottles in every shade of amber and green. Behind the counter stands a man with an impressive mustache and absolutely no medical license, stirring concoctions with names like Dr. Bliss's Brain Restorer and Professor Smith's Electric Elixir. The air smells faintly of sugar, menthol, and misplaced confidence. It's the dawn of the soda fountain and the beginning of a love affair between America, carbonation, and pseudoscience. Let's be clear. Soda didn't start as a treat. It started as a treatment. Carbonated water was the 19th century's answer to wellness culture, the Gwyneth Paltrow goop of its day, but with more mercury. Doctors believed that bubbles had healing power. Effervescence, they said, stimulates digestion, uplifts the spirit, and restores balance to the humors, which is a fancy way of saying, it tickles your tongue, so it must be doing something. And it wasn't just water. Oh no. Into that bubbly base went everything humanity should probably never have ingested. Coca leaves for vitality, morphine for pain, arsenic for the complexion. If it made you feel weird, it was medicine. Even your local pharmacist became part chemist, part bartender, part therapist, listening to your woes, nodding sympathetically, and then sliding a glass of something vaguely glowing your way. "Drink this," he'd say. "It's scientifically proven to make you stop caring." Soda fountains became social hubs. People gathered there for conversation, gossip, and controlled substance distribution. It was the original Starbucks, except instead of caffeine and oat milk, you were getting carbonated narcotics topped with a cherry. The clink of glass against marble, the hiss of soda water, the soft fizz. It was America's first taste of modernity. And the message was clear. Science could fix anything, even your existential dread. The beauty of this era was its utter lack of oversight. No FDA, no labeling laws, no pesky clinical trials. You could bottle hope, call it medicine, and sell it to anyone with a nickel and a pulse. The more outrageous the claim, the better the sales. Tired? Depressed? Anxious? Try this sparkling lithium solution. People didn't just buy it, they swore by it. In a time when doctors prescribed leeches and whiskey, a lemon-flavored mood enhancer seemed downright logical. Of course, it wasn't all snake oil, at least not intentionally. Many of these soda inventors were true believers in chemistry. They'd read about new discoveries in Europe, where scientists were experimenting with carbonation, tonics, and mineral waters. The idea was that you could capture the healing power of nature, or at least the bubbly part of it, and bottle it for convenience. It was innovation fueled by equal parts curiosity and caffeine, and that's how the world got its first generation of pharmaceutical beverages. Some names you'd recognize today, Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, Pepsi, all started as medicinal marvels. Coca-Cola was meant to treat fatigue and morphine addiction, which is ironic since it contained both caffeine and cocaine. Dr. Pepper claimed to aid digestion. Pepsi promised to cure dyspepsia, or chronic heartburn. And each one came from the same place, the back room of a pharmacy where science met improvisation and occasionally exploded. By the turn of the century, soda had become a symbol of progress. Drinking a carbonated beverage meant you were modern, educated, and possibly hallucinating. Ads showed well-dressed men and women sipping from frosted glasses, smiling like they'd just discovered enlightenment through lemon syrup. Children were encouraged to drink it for health and vitality. And why not? It was medicine. Sweet, sparkling medicine that didn't taste like despair. Of course, the real secret wasn't the medicine. It was the sugar. Humanity's oldest coping mechanism, now carbonated. Sugar made everything palatable. The bitterness of quinine, the burn of alcohol, the chalky taste of crushed lithium carbonate. The sweetness made it feel safe, even when it wasn't. Because that's the great irony of early soda. It was both the poison and the cure, the problem and the placebo. So there you are, sitting at a marble counter in 1895, sipping your bubbly brain elixir, while the soda jerk polishes glasses with a rag that's seen better centuries. You feel good, better than good. The room seems lighter. The worries about rent, the cough that won't go away, the sense that the world is getting too fast, all of it dissolves in the fizz. You smile. Maybe the bubbles really are working. And somewhere in the back of the store, a man is writing on a chalkboard, now experimenting with lemon flavoring and lithium salts, because this is where it all begins, not with a soft drink, but with an idea. That science could be sweet, medicine could sparkle, and happiness might just come bottled, chilled, and lightly carbonated. And for a while it did. In the roaring streets of early 20th century Street, Louis, Missouri, you'd find a man hunched over glass beakers and syrupy concoctions, sleeves rolled up, eyes slightly too wide for comfort. His name was Charles Liper Grigg, and he wasn't just making soda, he was making feelings. Specifically, he was bottling happiness, one bubbling lemon-lime experiment at a time. Charles wasn't a chemist by training. He was a salesman. The kind of man who could convince you that rain was just unbottled refreshment. Born in 1868, he came of age in the golden era of tonic medicine, when every other guy with a mustache thought he could cure the human condition with carbonation and optimism. He started off working in advertising, pitching everything from soap to canned food, before stumbling into the world of soft drinks where sugar, science, and showmanship met in one glass. Grigg began his career with a company called Whistle, where he helped market an orange soda that became surprisingly popular. But like any good inventor in history, he was equal parts visionary and stubborn. He had ideas of his own, new flavors, new formulas, and, most importantly, a drink that could outshine Coca-Cola. Unfortunately, Whistle's management didn't appreciate his ambition. Office politics flared, egos clashed, and Charles was forced out. But he didn't quit. No, he did what any self-respecting soda alchemist would do. He started brewing his revenge in a basement. And what a basement it was! Picture dim lighting, glass jars filled with mysterious liquids, and Charles mixing syrups like a wizard mid-breakdown. The walls probably smelled like citrus and broken dreams. He called his first solo experiment Howdy, a cheerful orange-flavored soda that did moderately well but lacked the spark of genius. What he needed was something different, something that wasn't already crowding the shelves. Orange was taken, cola was saturated. Grape was a graveyard of failed products. So he went for lemon-lime, a flavor nobody had quite nailed yet. And here's where the magic happened. Grigg wasn't just thinking about flavor, he was thinking about function. Everyone in the 1920s was anxious. The economy was wobbling. Modern life was accelerating, and people were discovering that working 14-hour days wasn't as glamorous as it sounded in the brochure. What if, Grigg wondered, there was a drink that didn't just taste good, but made you feel good? He'd heard about lithium salts, a compound praised by chemists for its supposed ability to balance mood and soothe the nerves. In reality, it was a potent psychiatric drug, but to Charles, it sounded like the secret ingredient to bottled joy. So he mixed it in. Just a little lithium carbonate, not enough to knock you over, but enough to make your neurons feel like they'd just taken a vacation. The result was light, tart, and mysteriously uplifting. It didn't just refresh you, it made you hum. When he finally bottled his creation in 1929, he named it something that rolled right off the tongue. Bib, label, lithiated lemon, lime soda. You know, the kind of name that screams marketing genius. The label looked like something from a laboratory supply catalogue. Serious, sterile, medicinal. And yet, people loved it. It felt modern, scientific, trustworthy. Drinking it made you part of the future. Sure, it was a future laced with mood stabilizers, but that was a minor detail. The timing couldn't have been more bizarre. Grigg's soda launched just weeks before the stock market crash of 1929. While the economy was disintegrating, his drink was fizzing. People lost their savings, but they still had 5 cents for a soda that promised to make everything okay, chemically or otherwise. In an era when the national pastime was despair, Charles Grigg was selling bottled optimism. His factory, the Howdy Corporation, became a beacon of strange hope. Workers mixed syrup and carbonation by hand, while crates of bottles rolled out of the plant like glass antidepressants on wheels. The product caught on in pharmacies first, that perfect blend of scientific and sweet. By 1932, the drink was quietly spreading across the Midwest. People weren't sure why it made them feel so good, but they didn't ask questions. In the early 20th century, if something worked, you didn't overthink it. You just bought another case. Grigg, ever the marketer, leaned into the health angle. Ads claimed his soda aided digestion, soothed upset stomachs, and even invigorated the mind. He wasn't technically lying. Lithium will do that. Customers swore by it. Parents gave it to kids. Doctors recommended it to patients. And Charles just smiled. probably wondering how he'd pulled off the greatest accidental psychopharmacological experiment in American history. Eventually, he realized the name bib label lithiated lemon lime soda wasn't exactly catchy. You couldn't order it without sounding like a malfunctioning typewriter. So he rebranded. The new name, 7 Up. Short, modern, mysterious. Some said it referred to the drink's 7 ingredients. Others thought it referenced lithium's atomic mass. Grigg never explained, probably because he enjoyed watching the world guess. By the time he died in 1940, his lemon-lime brain elixir had already cemented its place in American culture. The lithium stayed in the formula until 1948, when the FDA finally noticed that half the country's children were technically medicated. But by then, 7-Up was unstoppable. So next time you crack open a can and hear that cheerful fizz, remember Charles Leiper Grigg, the man who turned chemistry into comfort, science into soda, and America's collective anxiety into a marketable flavor. Because before 7-Up was a soft drink, it was a state of mind. And that mind was extremely calm. You've probably done some questionable things in your life. Eaten questionable sushi, dated questionable people, maybe even taken vitamins without checking what they were. But in the 1930s, Americans took questionable to a whole new, effervescent level, because the secret ingredient in their favorite soft drink, the one they gave to children, sipped at lunch counters, and advertised as wholesome, was lithium carbonate. Yes, the same chemical used today to treat bipolar disorder and severe depression was once casually dissolved into lemon-lime soda. Lithium was discovered in the early 19th century by a Swedish chemist who thought it might cure gout. It didn't. But that didn't stop the medical community from tossing it into everything from mineral waters to lozenges. By the time Charles Leiper Grigg stumbled across it, lithium was already enjoying a reputation as a nerve tonic. The thinking went something like this. People who were sad were unbalanced, and lithium, a literal metal, would balance them. Science. Of course, this was the late 1920s. The bar for scientific rigor was somewhere between vibes and hunches. If something made you feel better, it was medicine. If it sparkled, even better. So when Grigg created his lithiated lemon-lime soda, no one batted an eye. In fact, it sounded downright responsible. Why just have sugar and bubbles when you could have sugar, bubbles, and emotional stability? The logic was simple. Or rather, simplistic. Lithium carbonate was known to calm people down, reduce irritability, and stabilize mood swings. The side effects, tremors, dehydration, and potential kidney issues, were mostly ignored because, well, people didn't read the fine print. And since the average soda drinker wasn't exactly overdosing, each bottle contained about 5 milligrams of lithium, no one dropped dead. Instead, they just felt good, like a sigh in liquid form. Imagine taking a sip. The lemon-lime bite hits your tongue, the bubbles dance in your mouth, and within minutes you feel chill. Not high, not drowsy, just pleasantly indifferent. The stock market's crashed? Fine. Your boss is yelling? Whatever. The neighbor's cow ate your laundry again. Classic cow. Life still stinks, but it somehow feels manageable. That was the magic of lithium. It didn't fix your problems. It just made them seem like someone else's. People loved it. They didn't know why, but they did. The soda was refreshing, crisp, and, unknowingly, gently mood-stabilizing. It was like the world's first antidepressant disguised as a soft drink. Mothers swore it kept their kids calm. Men claimed it cured nerves. Women said it lifted the spirits. The only ones who didn't love it were pharmacists, who were suddenly losing business to a beverage aisle. And Grigg? He didn't exactly hide it. The word lithiated was right there on the label. He told everyone. But here's the thing. People didn't understand what lithiated meant. It sounded technical, scientific, trustworthy. In an era when advertisements claimed cigarettes were good for digestion and radium made your teeth whiter, lithium soda seemed almost wholesome. Lithium even had history on its side. By the 1930s, natural lithia waters, mineral springs rich in lithium salts, had become popular vacation spots. People flocked to them for their healing properties. Bathing in lithium water was said to relieve stress and restore vitality. Drinking it was believed to cleanse the mind, so when 7-Up came along promising the same benefits in a bottled, lemony form, it wasn't weird. It was genius. Doctors didn't object either. In fact, many endorsed it. Some even prescribed it. A soda that improved mood, aided digestion, and quenched thirst? Perfect. Nobody worried about long-term effects because, well, the world was still figuring out penicillin. The Great Depression had people anxious and hopeless. And here was a 5-cent miracle that promised instant calm. It was science meets capitalism meets existential crisis. And America gulped it down. There was, however, one small problem. Lithium doesn't just make you calm, it can also make you too calm, like staring at a wall for 3 hours and forgetting your name calm. A few scientists quietly raised concerns, but their warnings fizzled in the face of booming sales. People didn't want reality. They wanted relief. And lithium-laced 7-Up delivered it with a twist of lime. For almost 2 decades, nobody questioned it. The company advertised it proudly. Takes the ouch out of grouch, one ad boasted. It was both ridiculous and accurate. Kids drank it. Pregnant women drank it. One baby ad even showed a smiling infant sipping from a straw captioned, "Start your child right," which, in hindsight, sounds more like a threat than advice. But in 1948, science finally caught up with enthusiasm. The FDA quietly stepped in, suggesting that perhaps, just perhaps, mass dosing the population with mood stabilizers was not a sustainable business model. Lithium was removed from the formula. No press release, no scandal, just gone. Overnight, the nation's collective serenity dipped a few notches, and nobody knew why. For 2 decades, America had been self-medicating without realizing it. They'd bottled calm, labeled it refreshment, and built an empire on the bliss of ignorance. And maybe, just maybe, that's why 7-Up still calls itself the Uncola. Because deep down, it's not about caffeine or cola wars. It's about that faint, fizzy memory of a simpler time, when happiness came from a glass bottle, and the secret ingredient was the one thing everyone refused to question. When you imagine the Great Depression, you probably picture breadlines, soup kitchens, and men in hats sadly selling apples on a street corner. But let's set the scene a little more realistically. It's 1931. Your neighbor is playing a melancholy tune on a battered radio. Your shoes have more patches than leather. And there, glinting like a beacon of hope behind the counter at your local pharmacy, is a glass bottle of 7-Up. The original hang in there, in liquid form. You reach into your pocket and feel the rough edges of a nickel. 5 cents. In this era, it's not just a coin, it's a ticket to feeling almost okay for 12 ounces. While the stock market is crashing and the bank has politely foreclosed on your optimism, you still have access to one thing Wall Street can't take: artificially carbonated peace of mind. Soda in the early 1930s wasn't a treat. It was a brief escape, a mini vacation that took place on a swiveling stool at the drugstore, under the soft hum of neon lights and the perpetual clink of glass. For 5 cents, you could forget, at least for the duration of a long, slow sip, that everything else in your life was falling apart. The soda jerk would pop open a bottle, and the fizz would rise like hope itself. You'd tip the glass, feel that cool lemon lime hit your tongue, and for a moment, just a moment, you weren't living through history's rough draft. You were living the American dream. Why did 7-Up thrive while the economy tanked? Timing, for one. Charles Griggs' lithiated lemon-lime soda hit the market just before the crash. While fortunes were evaporating, his little green bottles multiplied. Soda was cheaper than a therapist, easier to swallow than despair, and socially acceptable to drink for breakfast. And thanks to the miracle of lithium carbonate, it did what the government couldn't. It actually calmed people down. It wasn't just adults lining up for their daily dose of manufactured hope. Children got in on the action too. Kids who once would have been sent outside to burn off energy now sat quietly, sipping their way through the family's collective neuroses. There are stories of entire households gathering around the radio, each clutching a sweating glass of 7-Up, listening to FDR's fireside chats with an air of suspicious serenity. Roosevelt may have promised a New Deal, but 7-Up delivered a new mood. Let's talk about marketing. During the Depression, companies couldn't just sell a product. They had to sell an experience. 7-Up's advertisements were masterpieces of gentle suggestion. Feel right. Drink 7-Up and a fresh start in every glass. Some ads went further, offering the promise of not just good digestion, but a cheerful disposition. Try finding that on a can of modern diet soda. And it worked. Soda fountains became sanctuaries. No matter how bad the news, you could always buy a little calm for the price of a postage stamp. In an age of scarcity, 7-Up was abundance, a reliable comfort in a world where everything else felt unpredictable. Even the act of sitting down with a soda became a ritual of optimism, a tiny rebellion against despair. It didn't fix your problems, but it made them feel less sharp. Of course, there's irony here. The nation's great liquid comfort was literally a psychoactive drug, and nobody cared. Or maybe nobody wanted to care. People were tired. The promise of a chemically induced, cheerful disposition was exactly what America needed. In the land of the free, the pursuit of happiness sometimes came with a side of lithium, and the experience was all in the details. The feel of the glass bottle, cold and sweating in your palm, the sharp snap of the cap, the tickle of carbonation, the soft hum of conversation in the background, punctuated by the occasional laughter of someone who, for a few blessed minutes, forgot about unemployment rates and remembered what hope tasted like. So here's the punchline. While America was in the grip of its harshest reality check, the nation's best-selling mood booster came not from a pharmacy prescription or a psychologist's couch, but from a soda fountain. 5 cents for a chance to feel better. No questions asked. And maybe that's the real secret of the Great Depression cure, that in a time of collective anxiety, the greatest luxury wasn't gold or land or even job security. It was 12 ounces of carbonated courage, quietly fizzing with the promise that tomorrow might, just might, be a little bit sweeter. Step into a 1930s American pharmacy, and you're not just entering a drugstore, you're walking into a temple of hope, marble counters gleaming under milky lamps, brass fixtures polished until you can see your reflection, which, thankfully, looks less worried in the flattering low light. The air is heavy with the scent of menthol and liniment, mingled with the sweet tang of syrupy soda. Here, the pharmacist isn't just a dispenser of pills. He's an alchemist, a therapist, and for the price of a nickel, a dealer in optimism. It's the golden age of the soda fountain, and the pharmacy is the Silicon Valley of dreams. White-jacketed soda jerks stand at attention behind the counter. ready to whip up whatever you need. A root beer for a sore throat, a phosphate for heartburn, and, if your nerves are acting up, a tall glass of 7-Up. The marble bar is packed with people, students in woolen sweaters, mothers with fussy toddlers, old men reading the paper and pretending not to notice the world collapsing outside. There's no Spotify playlist here, but the clink of glasses and the hiss of carbonated water provide all the ambience you'll ever need. What's wild is that the boundary between medicine and treat doesn't exist yet. You don't sip your soda at a plastic table. You sit at the counter, chatting with the pharmacist about your ailments, your day, and the latest town gossip. He'll listen kindly, stroke his mustache, then prescribe a refreshing tonic that doubles as dessert and possibly a mild psychiatric intervention. Here, drinks don't just taste good, they promise to heal, restore, and, in the case of 7-Up, gently dial down the existential panic of the era. The labels on the bottles reinforce the mood. Lithiated lemon-lime soda, they read, in fonts that look suspiciously like something you'd see on an old apothecary jar. Everything about 7-Up's design screams scientific progress, and trust me, I'm a doctor. Which is funny, since most soda jerks had only graduated from high school, and the FDA was still learning how to spell oversight. For the average American, though, the pharmacy was where innovation lived. If it was sold next to cough syrup, it had to be good for you. And let's be honest, this was an age where you could get a little something extra in almost every glass. Coca-Cola still had a residue of cocaine. Dr. Pepper contained pepsin, a digestive enzyme from pigs. Pharmacy soda fountains were the original functional beverage dispensaries, long before wellness influencers discovered adaptogens. 7-Up simply took things a step further. Why not blend mood stability into your mid-afternoon pick-me-up? The ritual itself was half the medicine. After a hard morning at work or a long walk through dust-choked streets, you'd perch on a squeaky bar stool and order a drink with the confidence of someone investing in their future. The soda jerk would grab a chilled bottle, pop the cap with a practiced snap, and pour it into a tall glass, ice chiming softly. The first sip was sharp, citrusy, and almost medicinal, but the real magic came a few minutes later, when you realized you actually felt better. Was it the sugar? The carbonation? The lithium? You'd never know, but you'd keep coming back for more. If you were feeling especially run down, you could ask for a prescription mix, blending 7-Up with other tonics for a customized cure. Headache? Try it with a dash of bitters. Trouble sleeping? Add a splash of cherry phosphate. There was something for everyone, and no shortage of medical bravado. You'd see mothers give their children a glass, claiming it helped with digestion. Teens swore it gave them energy for baseball practice. Old-timers insisted it was the only thing that settled their stomach after Aunt Mabel's meatloaf. The pharmacy was a place where nobody judged, and everyone pretended science had it all figured out. You could come in for cough drops and walk out with a smile, a bottle of 7-Up, and maybe, just maybe, the vague feeling that everything was going to be all right. The pharmacy aesthetic wasn't just about white tiles and glass jars. It was about trust, ritual, and the comforting illusion that the cure was always just a sip away. So the next time you see an old soda fountain in a museum, imagine yourself there, elbows on the marble, heart a little lighter, sipping from a cold glass and believing, if only for a moment, that you're drinking the future. Because for a while, you really were. If you want to know what pure, unfiltered optimism looks like, you don't need a time machine. Just open a 1930s 7-Up advertisement. Here, in a riot of cheerful fonts and sketchy medical claims, you'll find an America that believes happiness can be bottled, sold for a nickel, and served with a straw. The marketing teams behind early 7-Up weren't just selling a drink. They were selling serenity, bliss, And the idea that you could fix your nerves the same way you fixed a craving for something sweet, with a cold glass of lemon, lime, and a gentle side of lithium carbonate. Let's get one thing straight. 7. Up's marketing department was ahead of its time. Today's brands would sacrifice their Twitter accounts to be this shamelessly effective, while most of America was worrying about where the next meal was coming from. 7-Up's ads were promising a cheerful disposition in every glass. And take the ouch out of grouch. If modern pharmaceutical commercials came with talking lemons and no list of side effects, this is exactly what they would look like. Imagine flipping through a magazine in 1935. Between ads for corsets, mustache wax, and Ford's newest model, you'd find a smiling baby clutching a glass of 7-Up. Captioned, "So pure, so wholesome, you can give it to babies." Yes, babies. If you're wondering whether parents really needed help getting their kids to calm down, remember, there was no iPad. A little lithiated lemon lime went a long way toward family harmony. The world was anxious, and 7-Up positioned itself as the original gentle parenting hack, one that came with a twist of citrus and a side of subtle sedation. But this wasn't just about babies. The target audience was everyone with a pulse and a problem. Tired workers were encouraged to swap their lunch hour cigarette for a glass of 7-Up. Housewives were told the drink would help them keep smiling through the laundry. Even harried students were promised clarity and calm before their exams. The message was simple: if life's getting you down, the solution isn't self-reflection or vacation. It's a drink. The language was deliberately vague. Early 7-Up never outright said, "This will cure your depression." Instead, it danced around the idea with lines like, "Brings out the sunshine and refreshes you when you're tired, nervous, or blue." It was the soft drink version of a self-help book, only easier to digest and far less likely to end up gathering dust on the nightstand. Visuals were equally cunning. Ads showed impossibly happy families. Dad just home from work, tie still on, hair unruffled, mom glowing, never frazzled, children tidy and clearly not screaming or throwing toys. Everyone is sharing a bottle of 7-Up, grinning like they'd just won the lottery and immediately invested in lemon groves. If you looked closely, you'd see that the dog was probably calmer than most modern adults. The real genius was how the company borrowed authority from science and medicine. Bottles boasted their lithiated status, and the phrase, "for health and good cheer," appeared everywhere. Testimonials claimed that doctors recommended 7-Up for settling the stomach and restoring good humor. With enough repetition, America collectively decided that lithiated meant doctor-approved. And since most Americans didn't know what lithium was, they assumed it was basically like a vitamin, just with better advertising. There was a subtle implication, too, that by drinking 7-Up, you were taking part in something modern and scientific. The world was full of uncertainties, but the bright, green bottle in your hand was a product of progress. Ads featured words like purity and wholesome, reinforcing the illusion that soda wasn't just a treat, it was an act of self-care, one that you could buy in bulk for the price of a single aspirin. Of course, modern eyes see the absurdity. Drink this to be happy is right up there with buy this soap to be beautiful. But in the 1930s, when anxiety was a household guest, this was a pitch people desperately wanted to believe. They didn't have therapy apps or meditation podcasts. They had advertisements promising that emotional well-being was just a bottle away. So the next time you see a smiling lemon mascot or a soda ad promising good vibes only, remember, marketing bliss is nothing new. America has always wanted the easy answer, preferably one that comes with ice. And for a while, it was as easy as opening a bottle, taking a sip, and letting the fizz wash your worries away. If you ever think childhood in the 1930s was all about running through fields, making soapbox cars, and surviving dust storms with grit and marbles, think again. For a surprisingly large chunk of the population, childhood was also about sipping a glass of lemon-lime soda spiked with pharmaceutical-grade lithium. Yes, while you were worrying about fractions, your favorite treat was gently medicating your central nervous system. Welcome to America, the only country that managed to accidentally run a mass clinical trial using the beverage aisle. Let's set the scene. The average day for a 1930s kid started with chores, continued with school, maybe, and ended with dodging parental anxiety about everything from the Great Depression to polio. And if you were lucky, you'd swing by the local pharmacy for a nickel treat. A cold, sparkling bottle of 7-Up. For kids, it was pure joy. No one knew about empty calories. No one worried about sugar. And absolutely nobody had read the label closely enough to notice the lithiated part. Picture yourself standing at a marble-topped soda fountain, feet dangling from a tall stool, the soda jerk, a neighborhood teen with strong wrists and an even stronger disregard for ingredient lists, pours you a glass, slides it down the counter, and grins. "Good for what ails you," he says. As if there's anything in the world that can ail a child in a world made of summer afternoons and lemon fizz. Parents loved it too. Why wouldn't they? In an era when kids were expected to be seen, not heard, and ideally, not screaming, 7-Up was a gentle miracle. The ads practically wrote themselves. So pure, so wholesome, you can give it to babies. Some campaigns even showed infants sipping from a glass, big eyes full of innocence and, very likely, chemical calm. In households where bedtime stories often lost to bedtime chaos, a round of 7-Up was as much a ritual as brushing your teeth, except with far more measurable results. The funny thing is, nobody thought of it as medicating kids. In the pre-ADHD diagnosis era, nobody worried about attention spans or hyperactivity. If your child was bouncing off the walls, they needed fresh air and a soda, not therapy. Mood swings weren't a diagnosis, just part of growing up. And so, while modern parents debate screen time and food dyes, 1930s parents debated whether a second glass of lithium-laced soda was too much of a good thing. For the record, it was. Teachers didn't object either. If anything, a generation of students quietly sipping 7-Up during recess might have made the school day a bit easier to manage. Fewer tantrums, fewer outbursts, and maybe a few more silent reading periods. The classroom of the soda pop generation was less about gold stars and more about an accidental experiment in collective mood management. But what did it actually feel like? Imagine being a kid, full of energy and dreams, suddenly hit with a wave of gentle, inexplicable tranquility. 1 minute, you're arguing over baseball cards. The next, you're content to simply sit in the shade and watch clouds drift by. The world is still big and confusing, but now it's slightly less alarming, a little softer around the edges. It's like summer vacation in a bottle, with side effects nobody bothered to study. Of course, there were outliers. Some kids claimed they never liked the taste, that it was too lemony or not as fun as root beer. Others just wanted the bubbles, not the calming undertone. But for most, 7-Up was as natural a part of childhood as scraped knees and backyard games. And unlike castor oil or mystery cough syrup, it actually tasted good. Did parents ever suspect there was something more going on? Maybe. But in an age before warning labels, lawsuits, or even a basic understanding of child psychology. Most adults just chalked up their kids' good moods to fresh air, hard work, and, perhaps, a mysterious gift from the soda gods. It wasn't until 1948 that the FDA finally asked, should we really be giving pharmaceutical-grade mood stabilizers to children in soda? Spoiler: no. Lithium was removed, but the legend of the soda pop generation remained, an era when childhood was fizzy, bright, and oddly serene. So if you ever wonder why your grandparents seem so chill, maybe it wasn't just the good old days. Maybe it was 7 Up, quietly writing a whole chapter in the history of American childhood, one lithiated lemon-lime bottle at a time. It's a Wednesday afternoon in 1937. The kitchen radio hums, laundry flaps on the line, and your mother stands at the counter, hair perfectly curled and nerves very nearly frayed. She survived another morning of sibling squabbles, broken dishes, and the looming threat of surprise visits from judgmental neighbors. But as the clock strikes 3, she reaches into the icebox and pulls out the modern miracle that will save the afternoon. A bottle of 7 Up. It's lemony, it's fizzy, and, according to every magazine, and the most charming soda jerk in town, it's so pure, so wholesome, you can give it to babies. Let's set the mood. Parenting in the 1930s wasn't a pastel-hued Instagram fantasy. It was chaos, obligation, and the unending pressure to produce well-behaved children without losing your mind. Gentle parenting was what happened when you lost your voice from yelling and gave up. But with 7 Up in the fridge, you didn't have to choose between patience and peace. You could just pour a glass, hand your kid a straw, and let the lithium do the heavy lifting. Mothers loved 7 Up because it was marketed directly to them. Forget today's hand-wringing over sugar content or questionable additives. Back then, the key word was wholesome. The ads weren't subtle. They showed rosy-cheeked babies, smiling mothers, and tidy kitchens that had never seen a tantrum. The all-family drink, one ad shouted, promising that 7 Up would keep everyone refreshed, happy, and, though never stated outright, noticeably more relaxed. It wasn't just advertising genius. The entire ritual around serving soda felt sophisticated. A mother would reach for her best glasses, drop in a few ice cubes, and pour the bubbling tonic with the flourish of a pharmacist. Kids would gather around, eyes wide, hoping for an extra splash. Even Dad got in on the act, enjoying his own glass after mowing the lawn or fixing the car, sometimes with a wink that suggested maybe, just maybe, adulthood wasn't all bills and back pain. The truth is, 7 Up made family life easier. It turned bedtime into a manageable operation. It softened the edges of rainy days and teething. Mothers could offer it to guests without apology, knowing that the lemon-lime drink was considered just as safe as milk or juice. In fact, some mothers used it as a mixer for homemade cough syrup, which, in a way, was the most honest product labeling of the entire decade. Let's talk about the science, or the lack thereof. Most mothers in the 1930s didn't have access to medical journals or FDA warnings. Their knowledge came from word of mouth, family tradition, and the ads that filled the pages of Ladies' Home Journal. If a magazine said something was good for you, it was. And if the neighbor's child calmed down after a glass of 7 Up, well, that was proof enough. You look so peaceful, one mother would say to another, handing over a chilled bottle as if it were a secret to surviving the week. And maybe, in a way, it was. There's something almost touching about the trust involved. Mothers believed that the companies making these drinks wanted the best for families. They believed in the cheerful faces in the ads, neat rows of bottles at the store, and the idea that modern science could make home life simpler. No one was worried about over-medicating a child. The concept barely existed. The only side effect anyone noticed was a sudden, mysterious willingness to nap. Of course, hindsight is a harsh teacher. Today, we can see the absurdity in marketing a psychoactive beverage to infants and calling it wholesome. But in that pre-warning label era, when mothers juggled chores, nerves, and a parade of hungry kids, 7-Up offered a rare kind of hope. Hope that a drink could solve problems. Hope that happiness might just come with bubbles. So next time you see a vintage ad featuring a serene mother and a smiling baby with a straw, remember, they weren't being naive. They were doing their best with what they had, in a world that was always just a little too much. And if it took a little lithium to make life sweeter, well, who can blame them? America in the 1930s and 40s was a country anxious about nearly everything. The Great Depression, world wars, dust storms, newfangled jazz music, and whether the neighbors were judging your lawn. Yet, beneath all this cultural anxiety, something strange was happening. People were calmer than the headlines suggested. They were, in fact, a nation of accidentally chilled-out citizens, thanks to a shared ritual that looked innocent on the surface but was quietly revolutionizing mood management. Cracking open a bottle of 7-Up. Imagine this. You're living in an era where therapy is for the rich. Meditation is something only monks in faraway lands do. And self-care means using both soap and hot water in the same month. Emotional regulation isn't discussed. It's something you do with the help of a family-sized pie, a stoic attitude, or, if you're lucky, a lemon lime soda. Except, this soda isn't just sugar and bubbles. It's laced with lithium, the active ingredient modern psychiatrists prescribe for serious mood disorders. Only back then, it was handed out like candy. You wake up, worry about the bills, then remember, there's a cold bottle of 7-Up waiting in the icebox. You pour yourself a glass. The first sip is tart and refreshing. The next thing you know, the edges of your day feel a little softer. Your boss yells? You nod, slightly glassy-eyed, and think, he probably just needs a soda. The radio reports another bank failure. And you shrug, refill your glass, and go back to the crossword. It's not that life is easier, it just feels more distant. It's not only adults experiencing this mysterious calm. The lithium rush swept across every demographic. Children, who once had the energy of caffeinated ferrets, now sat quietly in church pews, serene and sticky-lipped. Teenagers, instead of brooding on porches, discussed plans for the weekend without dramatic eye-rolling. Even grandmothers, notorious for their chronic worry and vocal opinions about everyone else's casserole, seemed to mellow out, pouring 7-Up at Sunday suppers and listening to their children's stories all the way to the end. And it was perfectly normal. Nobody questioned why the national mood had a gentle, sedated undertone. People chalked it up to good weather, solid, values, or that new lemon-lime drink from the pharmacy. You didn't need a prescription. You didn't need a diagnosis. You just needed a nickel and a thirst for something different, something lighter than the times themselves. Let's be clear. This wasn't an intentional social experiment. The beverage industry simply saw a marketing opportunity, promising refreshment, better digestion, and a cheerful disposition, and America took the bait. Nobody paused to wonder if a soda that doubled as a mood stabilizer was a little too good to be true. Why ruin a good thing? If you noticed you were less irritable, you told your friends to drink it too. If your kids napped longer, or your spouse was less likely to start an argument, you stocked up by the crate. There are anecdotes from the era that, in hindsight, read like accidental case studies. Families noted how quarrels seemed to fizzle out. Office squabbles became polite disagreements. Neighborhood meetings, once arenas for pent-up civic rage, became oddly pleasant. One town reportedly held the quietest city council meeting on record, all members sipping from sweating bottles and nodding agreeably. Even the pop culture reflected this newfound tranquility. Songs on the radio leaned toward the cheerful. Comedies featured less slapstick rage and more mellow, good-natured humor. Social critics would later muse that this was just the American spirit. But anyone who's ever had a mood stabilizer in their beverage knows there was a little more chemistry at play. Of course, there were skeptics, those who wondered if America's new sense of ease was too easy. But they were easily outnumbered by everyone enjoying their 12 ounces of relaxation. For nearly 2 decades, the nation's default setting was mildly content. It was the lithium rush, an era when life's sharpest problems lost their bite, and everyone learned to take things one sip at a time. So next time you hear someone sigh about the good old days and how people just seemed calmer, friendlier, and more even-keeled, don't blame it all on nostalgia or neighborly values. Blame the bubbles. For a little while, America was a nation that drank its troubles down and barely noticed how good it felt. Welcome to the 1930s beverage battlefield, where America's greatest rivalries weren't just between baseball teams or politicians, but between the contents of glass bottles sweating behind the counter. On one side, the jittery, caffeine-powered juggernaut known as Coca-Cola. On the other, the cool, collected lemon-lime upstart laced with lithium, 7-Up. It was a war of fizz, marketing, and national mood. Caffeine versus calm, go, go, go versus let it be. Pick your potion, pick your personality. Let's set the stage. In the depths of the Depression, Americans needed all the help they could get just to drag themselves out of bed. Enter Coca-Cola, a beverage that promised you pep, energy, and the faintest whiff of legal cocaine residue. It was the drink for factory workers, hustlers, and anyone who needed to pause and refresh, preferably before their second job of the day. The ads showed grinning young people with sparkling eyes and upright posture, all ready to tackle life's endless list of chores, thanks to a bracing shot of caffeine. But just a few seats down the marble soda fountain, the mood was entirely different. 7-Up didn't want to hype you up. It wanted to help you chill out. The ad copy boasted about nerves soothed, spirits lifted. The target market? Literally everyone who ever felt anxious, which, at that point, was the entire country. Where Coke promised productivity, 7-Up promised peace. It was less pause and refresh, and more sit and contemplate the wallpaper for a while. Think of it as the original Red Bull versus chamomile tea showdown. Except both came in glass bottles and no one needed an ID to buy either. The difference was palpable even in family dynamics. Parents who poured Coke for their children in the morning might be signing up for an afternoon of bouncing off the walls and impromptu wrestling matches in the living room. Families that reached for 7-Up, meanwhile, experienced a house so quiet you could hear the ice melt. Sometimes, in the same neighborhood, one family's kids were out mowing the lawn at record speed, while the neighbors sat quietly coloring, their lemonade mustaches betraying nothing but absolute serenity. Of course, the soda wars weren't just about mood, they were about branding too. Coca-Cola was the old-timer, the king of cola, the drink that survived prohibition by reinventing itself as a temperance beverage. It marketed itself as a symbol of American optimism and hustle. 7-Up, by contrast, played the role of the modern miracle, an emblem of science you can taste. The branding didn't just promise refreshment, it promised improvement. More energy or more tranquility, whichever side of the beverage aisle you preferred. Retailers noticed the divide, too. At the local drugstore, you'd see men in work shirts grabbing a Coke before heading out to paint houses or repair cars. At the next counter, mothers in floral dresses and children in school uniforms would order a round of 7-Up before heading home for homework and chores. Soda jerks, the diplomats of the era, never took sides. They just poured, smiled, and sometimes whispered, "Rough day?" as they slid a lemon-lime glass your way. Meanwhile, the ads stoked the rivalry. Coke ads focused on thirst knows no season, showing workers and athletes, while 7-Up's posters promised, "You'll feel like yourself again." If Coke was the drink of action, 7-Up was the drink of recovery. It's hard to imagine a more perfect metaphor for America's inner tension, torn between pushing through and taking a break, between bootstraps and bubble baths. Ironically, sometimes the same households stocked both. Morning began with a bracing Coca-Cola to shake off sleep and face the day. Evenings, after dinner, called for a round of 7-Up, a family ritual that replaced bedtime drama with a gentle yawn and a sudden willingness to share the bathroom. The soda wars never crowned a winner, because the truth was, Americans needed both. They needed something to get them moving and something to bring them back down. Productivity and peace, drive and downtime, served chilled, in glass bottles, and always within arm's reach. So next time you crack open a can and wonder whether you're team caffeine or team calm, remember, this is not a new battle. It's a ritual as old as the soda fountain itself, fizzing with a history of hustle and hush. Each bubble rising up to remind you that, sometimes, it's okay to let your drink decide your mood. Let's face it. Bib, label, lithiated lemon. Lime soda doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. It sounds less like a thirst quencher and more like something you'd find at the bottom of a Victorian medicine cabinet. But that was the original name Charles Leiper Griggs slapped onto his cheerful, mood-altering elixir. And for nearly a decade, that's what America drank. Either out of trust in science, or because nobody could pronounce it and just pointed at the bottle. But by the mid-1930s, the winds of marketing were shifting. The era of mysterious pharmaceutical-sounding brands was giving way to something catchier, punchier, and easier to order in a crowded soda shop. Enter the great American rebrand. 7-Up. 2 syllables, a quick nod to something mysterious, and absolutely zero hint of mood-stabilizing pharmaceuticals. The rebrand was more than a name change. It was an evolution, an act of marketing judo, and maybe one of the greatest pivots in soda history. The reasons for the switch were, in true 1930s style, shrouded in a little bit of legend and a lot of creative storytelling. Some say it's because there were 7 ingredients in the formula, or that 7 was a lucky number. Others swear it refers to lithium's atomic mass, which is, conveniently, about 7. There's a persistent myth that it was named for the original 7-ounce bottles. And then, of course, there's the simplest reason. It just sounded cool, upbeat, and clean, everything America wanted in a soda during a decade that was anything but. Picture yourself sliding onto a bar stool at a crowded soda fountain, eager to order a drink. Would you rather ask for a bib-label lithiated lemon-lime soda or a 7-Up? The answer is obvious. One sounds like a prescription, the other sounds like a party. In an era when every brand was racing to leave behind the dusty image of the apothecary, 7-Up became shorthand for modernity, simplicity, and, thanks to relentless advertising, optimism. The rebranding campaign was a masterclass in marketing magic. Old ads focused on the medicinal properties, promising to cure nerves and refresh the body. New 7-Up ads played up the fun, the family angle, and the notion that you could enjoy life and soda without thinking too hard. The bright green logo, the crisp new name, and the simple label invited you to drink first and ask questions never. But the genius of the rebrand went beyond just the name. It gave the company a blank slate. They could keep the lithium for a little while longer and all the supposed health benefits, but ditch the intimidating lithiated language. Instead, they shifted the narrative to one of pure refreshment. The science was still there, humming quietly in the background. But you didn't have to think about it. You could just be happy, take a sip, and enjoy a soda that now felt more like a lifestyle than a prescription. And the public embraced it with open arms. Soda fountains across the country swapped out their dusty bib label signage for the snappy 7-Up, and sales soared. It's a testament to the power of branding. With a few syllables and a new font, the same drink went from sounding like homework to tasting like recess. Of course, the product didn't actually change, at least not at first. Every bottle still contained a touch of lithium, still delivered that peculiar, gentle calm that kept Depression-era families so serene. But the story changed. Now you weren't just drinking medicine. You were part of a movement. You were on the up. It was aspirational, energetic, and, most importantly, easy to say. There's a lesson here for anyone who's ever tried to rebrand themselves, their business, or even just their Twitter handle. Sometimes, what you need isn't a new recipe, it's a new story. One that invites people in, makes them feel modern, and lets them forget, if only for a moment, what came before. So the next time you see a 7-Up glinting in a vending machine, remember, there's a little bit of marketing genius inside every bubble. A reminder that sometimes the difference between a medical curiosity and an American icon is just 6 fewer syllables and a lot more fizz. Imagine this. You're perched on a chrome-tipped soda fountain stool, a nickel sweating in your palm, and across the marble bar, the soda jerk is prepping a bottle of 7-Up. He isn't just pouring a drink, he's conducting a miniature science experiment. There's a quiet ritual to it. The pop of the cap, the fizz leaping up the neck, the glass filling with lemon, lime bubbles. It looks simple, but behind every bubbly sip is a collision of chemistry, commerce, and a uniquely American hunger for something new and improved. Let's get technical for a moment. Carbonation is, at its heart, science with flair. Early soda pioneers figured out how to dissolve carbon dioxide in water under pressure, trapping it in liquid form. When the pressure's released, pop! Tiny bubbles race to the surface, carrying with them an irresistible tickle that wakes up your tongue and tricks your brain into thinking something magical just happened. That sensation is no accident. It's dopamine in a glass. In a world of dreary chores and endless bad news, a drink that crackled and sizzled was as close to a magic trick as most people would ever see. But there's more to it than bubbles. 7-Up, like all great sodas, was a calculated blend of acid, sweetness, and flavor. The sharpness came from citric acid, giving the lemon lime its pucker. The sweetness, good old cane sugar, smoothed the bite. Add a dash of secret syrups, and you've got the taste of the future. For the American palate, always chasing the next best thing, this balance was everything. Too sour, and you made a face. Too sweet, and you got bored. The genius was in making it just right. Now, about that extra ingredient, lithium carbonate. It was more than a quirky selling point. It was chemistry at its most daring. Lithium salts, as we've seen, were marketed as mood stabilizers, slipped into mineral waters and tonics for decades. By including it in 7-Up, Charles Grigg wasn't just adding flavor, he was selling a new kind of wellness. Here was a soft drink that offered uplift in both taste and temperament. Each bubble didn't just carry flavor. It carried the vague promise of emotional balance. all courtesy of modern science. But the real sizzle came from the meeting of chemistry and capitalism. In the 1930s and 40s, America was obsessed with progress, and nothing symbolized progress quite like a drink that hissed, fizzed, and sparkled. 7-Up's advertising leaned into this. "Feel right, drink 7-Up," one campaign boasted, with diagrams of molecules and flowery words about refreshment. The company borrowed the visual language of laboratories, test tubes, beakers, men in white coats, to sell the idea that this wasn't just a soda, but a scientifically validated path to happiness. Behind the scenes, production was its own marvel. Massive vats, mixed syrup with purified water, filtered and chilled to perfection. Bottling plants were modern wonders, humming with conveyor belts, automatic cappers, and, by mid-century, gleaming glass windows so the public could marvel at the machinery. The sizzle wasn't just in your glass, it was a soundtrack to industrial progress. A bubbly chorus announcing that America was moving forward. One case of lemon, lime at a time. Consumers, of course, didn't care about the technical details. They cared about the show. The pop and fizz of a freshly opened bottle was half the experience. Kids lined up at the counter to watch the soda jerk pour the drink, hoping to catch an extra long sizzle. At home, parents cracked open bottles at family dinners, toasting small victories and larger dreams. The fizz was a symbol. We may be tired, but we're still sparkling. There's a reason 7-Up became so iconic. It wasn't just the flavor or even the lithium. It was the way it made ordinary life feel a little more extraordinary. With every sip, you weren't just drinking soda. You were taking part in a science experiment, an act of progress, and a tiny rebellion against the gloom. The chemistry was real, the capitalism unstoppable. So next time you watch bubbles rise in your glass, remember, you're not just seeing carbon dioxide at play. You're witnessing a legacy where science, salesmanship, and hope combined in a lemon-lime fizz that promised, if only for a moment, to make everything just a little bit lighter. Picture this. It's 1933. Prohibition has finally stumbled to its boozy, exhausted end. America is waking up from a national hangover, staring at empty flasks and shattered bathtubs, and asking, what now? For more than a decade, legal drinking was off the table for those who didn't know the right password or didn't own a trench coat. And while speakeasies and moonshine kept many a party alive, the country's palate had quietly shifted. Enter the soda fountain, a bright, bustling oasis that turned the American thirst for rebellion into a thirst for something carbonated. Let's be honest, Prohibition never really killed drinking. It just changed the venue and introduced everyone's grandmother to gin. But when the Volstead Act finally dried up, the culture of hanging out at a dark, smoky bar was no longer the only way to take the edge off. Suddenly, the corner drugstore with its marble counter, chrome stools, and rows of gleaming glass bottles seemed downright respectable and, crucially, legal. The soda fountain, once a side business for pharmacists, became the new social center. And at its heart, pulsing with every hiss of carbon dioxide, was the lemon-lime promise of 7-Up. Soda stepped in as more than just a drink. It was a ritual, a symbol, and, let's face it, a substitute for that lost afternoon cocktail. People of all ages gathered at the pharmacy for a bottle of pop, sharing the same counter where just years before, nervous pharmacists discreetly mixed up medicinal tonics heavy on the bourbon. 7-Up wasn't about getting tipsy. It was about getting right, about feeling good, laughing a little, and forgetting for a quarter of an hour at least that your boss, your bank, or your bunions were acting up. And, in a delicious twist, 7-Up's lithium content gave it a leg up on the competition. While Coca-Cola and root beer offered caffeine, sugar, and nostalgia, 7-Up offered something extra, genuine chemical calm. For adults suddenly navigating legal sobriety, and perhaps realizing that Uncle Marvin was much less charming without his daily Manhattan. The mellowing fizz of a lemon-lime soda was a soft landing. It was, in essence, a transitional beverage, the country's first mocktail with pharmaceutical perks. Soda fountains took this new status seriously. The ritual of going out for a soda was loaded with all the pageantry of cocktail hour. The soda jerk, part bartender, part local therapist, would pour your drink with a flourish, maybe even add a maraschino cherry for flair. Friends lingered for hours, laughing, flirting, and sharing secrets over tall, sweating glasses. In a world without Netflix or Instagram, the pharmacy counter was social media. You heard the news, met a date, debated baseball scores, and forgot, just for a moment, about the outside world. And children, who'd been mostly excluded from the speakeasy scene, hopefully, now became full citizens of Soda Nation. For them, the end of Prohibition didn't mean less fun. It meant more. More reasons to leave the house, more excuses to beg for a nickel, and more occasions to join the grown-ups in a ritual that was, at last, family-friendly. The family round of 7-Up after dinner became as American as apple pie, except with more fizz and less existential dread. Meanwhile, parents were just as grateful. No longer did they have to explain why they spent the evening at book club or return home smelling like bathtub gin and regret. Instead, they poured themselves a glass of 7-Up, sat with the family, and smiled, perhaps a little glassy-eyed, but sincerely happy for the first time in a while. And nobody needed to hide the empty bottles under the sink. The marketing departments noticed the shift and capitalized on it. Ads for 7-Up in the post-Prohibition years showed wholesome families, sparkling glassware, and bright kitchens. Everybody's happy when there's plenty of 7-Up, one declared. There was no hint of scandal or naughtiness, just the promise that togetherness and good moods could be found in a 12-ounce bottle. So, while Prohibition's repeal flooded the market with booze, it also left a thirsty gap in the culture, one that soda rushed in to fill. And for a generation used to sneaking around laws and pouring whiskey in coffee mugs, the honest joy of a lemon-lime fizz was nothing short of revolutionary. Next time you crack open a soda and hear that pop and hiss, remember, you're not just drinking bubbles, you're sipping on a moment in history, a toast to the brief, shining era when America swapped gin for lithium and everyone was better off for it. Step back in time to the 1930s, when the lines between doctor, pharmacist, and enthusiastic local soda jerk were more than a little blurry. America was a land where medical advice came as easily from a man in a white coat as from a guy who just finished sweeping the drugstore floor. It was the Wild West of medicine, and for a shining, bubbly moment, doctors actually approved and sometimes prescribed 7-Up. Let's be clear. Medical standards were a bit loose. The American healthcare system was still finding its footing. The FDA was in its awkward teenage years. Penicillin was a rumor, and nobody had figured out that cough syrup shouldn't contain heroin. It was a time when if something felt good, tasted nice, or stopped you from screaming into a pillow, it must be healthy. This was the mindset that allowed a lemon-lime soda spiked with lithium to waltz into the pharmacy, slap a label on itself, and call itself medicine. And that's exactly what happened. Doctors were quick to embrace 7-Up, not just because it tasted great, but because its lithiated formula seemed almost too good to be true. Lithium salts were being studied as treatments for everything from kidney stones to depression, and nobody was particularly concerned about side effects. Medical journals praised lithium as a miracle for modern nerves. If you were anxious, sleepless, or just tired of your children's shenanigans, the prescription was simple. Take a glass of lithiated soda and call me in the morning. Imagine the scene. You go to the doctor with the kind of existential malaise that comes from living through an economic collapse, and instead of a stern lecture or bitter tonic, you get handed a smile and a coupon for 7-Up. Nerves? 7-Up. Stomach upset? 7-Up. Your husband's impossible? Well, you get the idea. The humble lemon-lime soda took its place beside aspirin, hot water bottles, and that mysterious blue ointment your grandmother swore by. It wasn't just the advertising, either. Doctors actually put their reputations on the line. Testimonials from physicians adorned magazine pages. I recommend 7-Up for my most nervous patients, a wholesome aid to digestion. It was a golden era for beverage companies. All they had to do was print a few words in fancy script, toss in a white lab coat, and boom, instant credibility. Hospitals even stocked the stuff. You'd see nurses in crisp uniforms serving up glasses of 7-Up to patients in recovery. For children with fevers or stomach bugs, the gentle fizz and sweet taste were a godsend. Never mind that their moods were being ever so slightly stabilized along the way. The gentle pop of the bottle cap became as much a part of the healing process as chicken soup or warm compresses. But the wildest part? Nobody asked too many questions. If it came in a bottle, was recommended by a doctor, and tasted good, it was basically health food. There were no warning labels, no side effect disclaimers, and no one doing long-term studies on childhood soda consumption. Who had time for caution when the world was busy inventing nylon and celebrating the magic of electricity? Of course, a few skeptics existed. A handful of wary scientists wondered if mass medicating the population, especially children, was a good idea. But their concerns were drowned out by the joyous fizz of a country hooked on the dream of a better mood in every glass. Besides, America was already sold. If the doctor says it's good for you, and it's available at the corner pharmacy, what could possibly go wrong? So for nearly 2 decades, a trip to the doctor could end not with bitter medicine, but with a prescription for lemon-lime refreshment. 7-Up was a beverage, a comfort, and, in its own peculiar way, a symbol of a time when medicine was as much about hope as it was about healing. Next time you see a white coat on a soda commercial, remember, it's a relic from the golden age of the doctor recommends it, when bubbly optimism and medical authority poured from the same bottle, and America happily drank it all in. Welcome to the golden age of American soft drinks, a time when beverages were less about hydration and more about chemistry experiments gone off the rails. If you ever wondered why your great-grandparents seemed so upbeat, look no further than their daily diet of sodas featuring ingredients that today would get a chemistry set confiscated at the airport. The beverage aisle was basically a mad scientist's hall of fame, and every sip came with a side of accidental pharmacology. Let's start with the headline act. Coca-Cola. In the late 1800s, Coca-Cola's secret ingredient wasn't just caffeine. It was actual, honest-to-goodness cocaine. John Pemberton, a pharmacist with both a morphine addiction and a knack for branding, decided the best way to cure a headache, or anything really, was to combine 2 of the most stimulating substances known to mankind. The result? A drink so invigorating that people didn't just love it, they felt like they could outrun trains. For years, each glass contained a few milligrams of coca leaf extract, enough to give you a little extra pep in your step and, possibly, inspire you to alphabetize your sock drawer at 3 a.m. But Coca-Cola wasn't alone in the race for chemical innovation. Over in Texas, a pharmacist named Charles Alderton invented Dr. Pepper, an energizing beverage featuring not only 23 mysterious flavors, but also pepsin, an enzyme borrowed from pig stomachs. Marketed as an aid to digestion, Dr. Pepper was the drink of choice for anyone who wanted their after-dinner burps to be scientifically optimized. If it tasted like medicine, that's because, at one point, it kind of was. Then there was Pepsi-Cola, another pharmacist's brainchild. Its original claim to fame? The name itself was a nod to preece, dyspepsia, a fancy word for indigestion. It wasn't designed to perk you up or knock you out, just to help you burp a little more comfortably. Aspirational marketing at its finest. Pepsi, like its rivals, didn't mind blurring the line between pharmacy and refreshment. The world's first soft drinks, after all, were born behind the drugstore counter, not the soda bottling plant. The beverage industry was a veritable playground for unregulated experimentation. Root beers and sarsaparillas promised to purify the blood. Ginger ales were settling the nerves, and energy tonics contained everything from cola nut extract to questionable amounts of alcohol. Some sodas even included bromides, chloral hydrate, or opiates for those really tough days at the office. You didn't just get a sugar rush, you got an entire neurochemical overhaul. Don't forget about the agricultural oddities. Dr. Pepper's pepsin may have been the most famous, but there were sodas containing beef extract, bone marrow, and even cow's milk for strength and vitality. You could walk into a pharmacy and order a glass of beefy soda, then top it off with a shot of nerve tonic for that extra 1930s sparkle. The farm-to-table movement had nothing on these folks. Children, of course, were part of the beverage fun. Ads routinely showed babies sipping sodas, toddlers clutching bottles with chubby, lithium-soothed fingers, and schoolchildren toasting good health with drinks loaded with more stimulants than a modern energy drink. Parents were assured that these drinks were pure and wholesome. Never mind the trace amounts of psychoactive substances. If it was in a bottle and sparkled in the sun, it was basically a multivitamin. The FDA eventually stepped in, but not before America enjoyed a golden age of caffeinated, carbonated, cocaine-tinged camaraderie. It was a wild ride, one that left its mark not only on taste buds, but on the nation's collective attitude toward what's normal to put in your mouth. So next time you pick up a can of soda and scan the ingredients list, breathe a small sigh of relief. Artificial sweeteners and natural flavors may be mysterious, but at least you're unlikely to find cocaine, pig enzymes, or a hint of lithium waiting for you. History's greatest hits were a little more literal, and a whole lot wilder than anything you'll find in the beverage aisle today. For nearly 2 decades, Americans had been sipping their way through a mass mood experiment, blissfully unaware that their favorite lemon-lime pick-me-up was dosed with a genuine psychiatric drug. But all good things, especially the one involving unregulated pharmaceuticals and the beverage habits of small children, must come to an end. By the late 1940s, the wild, fizzing frontier of medicinal soft drinks was about to meet its match. The newly empowered, freshly serious Food and Drug Administration. The party was over, and the hangover was about to begin. It started with a shift in the wind. Science was marching forward, and the FDA, finally growing into its regulatory britches, began noticing that the nation's beverage industry was still operating like it was the 19th century. For a while, nobody cared what went into soda as long as it tasted good. But by 1948, the cultural mood had changed. Penicillin, X-rays, and vitamins were real. People were starting to ask awkward questions about side effects, especially when wholesome drinks left them oddly glassy-eyed or oddly eager to nap. Lithium, which had once seemed as safe as sugar, was now the subject of closer scrutiny. Studies on its effects were more widely published. Doctors started to wonder if it was really a great idea to be handing out mood stabilizers to every man, woman, and toddler with a nickel. Spoiler: it wasn't. Murmurs grew louder in medical circles. And the government took notice. The FDA began investigating ingredients in everything, including soda. Suddenly, those proud lithiated labels that had once signaled modernity became a liability. Reports surfaced about the risks of chronic lithium intake, kidney problems, tremors, thyroid issues. You could almost hear the collective nervous gulp from soda executives. They'd gone from "drink this for health" to "don't ask too many questions" in record time. By 1948, the verdict was in. Lithium carbonate was to be removed from all soft drinks. No scandal, no dramatic headlines, no big press conferences, just a quiet disappearance. The lithiated part vanished from the label. The ingredient list got one line shorter, and the American public went about its business, only slightly more irritable and with a lot less involuntary napping. The transition was so subtle that most people didn't even realize anything had changed. Kids kept drinking their 7-Up. Parents still poured glasses at family dinners, and the soda fountain continued to fizz and pop, minus the psychoactive perks. The change marked the end of an era. For years, 7-Up had lived in that strange grey area between medicine and refreshment, promising both good cheer and a scientifically stabilized mood. Now, stripped of its chemical edge, it was just a tasty lemon-lime soda. The company pivoted quickly, launching new ad campaigns focused on purity, refreshment, and family fun. Never mind the missing medicinal miracle. The FDA's quiet crackdown didn't just change 7-Up. It signaled a shift for the entire soft drink industry. Gone were the days when any enterprising pharmacist could spike a soda with whatever ingredient they fancied. Now, ingredients had to be safe, tested, and non-mood altering. Mostly, caffeine somehow survived the purge. America's obsession with wellness would never quite be the same. Yet, for a brief, sparkling period, a generation of Americans found calm in a bottle, courtesy of Lithium and a soda jerk in a bow tie. And when the last lithiated labels disappeared, they left behind a legacy. Proof that sometimes what makes you feel better in the moment isn't always what you want hanging around for the long haul. So, next time you sip a modern 7-Up, remember, you're drinking the cleaned-up, regulated descendant of a true medicinal marvel, one that learned, eventually, to keep its science behind the scenes. One day, you're sipping your favorite lemon-lime soda, and life feels just a little bit softer around the edges. Your boss is still annoying, the bills are still piling up, and the neighbor's dog still barks at your garden gnome. But somehow, you don't really mind. And then, almost overnight, something changes. The soda tastes the same. The fizz is still there, but the world feels just a little sharper. The news a little louder, and your kids' arguments a lot more grating. Welcome to the great mood swing. The moment America's collective serenity slipped away, one unlithiated bottle at a time. When the FDA quietly forced lithium out of 7-Up and its fizzy cousins in 1948, there was no official announcement, no dire warning, and certainly no farewell parade for the nation's favorite accidental mood stabilizer. The ingredient just disappeared, erased from the label and, just as subtly, from the bloodstream of millions. For decades, families had been taking the edge off life with every glass. Now, they were flying solo, forced to confront daily frustrations without a chemical safety net. At first, most people didn't notice the difference. The soda tasted the same, with that familiar tart bite and cheerful bubbles. Kids still clamored for a cold bottle after school. Parents still poured it at parties. And the family fridge still hummed with promise. But slowly, in kitchens and lunchrooms across America, a new sensation crept in. Tempers flared a bit quicker. Family card games got a little more competitive. The neighbor's yappy dog was, for some reason, even louder than before. It was as if the entire country collectively shrugged off a thick, lemon-scented blanket. The easy calm that had once slipped invisibly into everyday life was gone, replaced by the baseline stress of modern existence. People went back to seeking comfort in all the old ways: long walks, chocolate bars, radio soap operas, or, for the very brave, family therapy sessions in the living room. It was as if America, after 2 decades of gentle pharmacological assistance, had to relearn how to cope with the ordinary chaos of being human. Of course, not everyone was affected the same way. Some folks grumbled about how 7-Up used to taste different, though they couldn't quite put their finger on why. Hint: it was the subtle lack of mood stabilization. Others didn't miss a beat, chalking up their irritability to the stress of the times, the kids, or the fact that the neighbor's garden gnome really did look smug this year. Companies, for their part, were in full damage control mode, without ever admitting there was anything to control. The new advertising blitz leaned hard into wholesomeness, freshness, and fun. Pictures of happy families, smiling children, and bright kitchens replaced the old, vaguely medicinal claims. "You like it, it likes." "You" was the new slogan, and nobody talked about nerves, cheerful dispositions, or anything that sounded remotely pharmaceutical. It was all about taste, sparkle, and innocent good times, never mind the slight uptick in national crankiness. Over time, the collective memory of lithium-laced soda faded into myth, then obscurity. By the 1960s, the very idea that a soft drink could alter your mood seemed laughable, a relic of a wilder, weirder past. The new challenge became finding happiness, or at least contentment, the old-fashioned way, by working on it. People found their cheerful disposition in other places: church picnics, sports, or the occasional Saturday night out. And if that didn't work, well, there was always caffeine. But the great mood swing was real, even if it wasn't acknowledged at the time. America had weathered depressions, wars, and restless nights with the help of a little extra chemistry. Then, suddenly, it was just them and the bubbles. The fizz stayed, but the chill was gone. So, next time you hear someone pine for the good old days, just smile. Those days were good, sure. But for a while, they were also a little bit medicated, and nobody knew it until it was gone. When lithium quietly slipped out of America's soda bottles in the late 1940s, it left more than a gap in the nation's collective chill. It left a branding crisis. How do you sell a drink that used to promise mental clarity, relaxation, and cheerful dispositions when it's suddenly just soda? Welcome to the great marketing pivot. The moment 7-Up went from pharmacy fixture to family fun, faster than you can say lithiated lemon lime. For years, 7-Up's ads had leaned into the pseudo-scientific. For nerves, for better digestion, the language was clinical, the images were reassuringly medical: smiling doctors, neat white coats, families sitting calmly together as if the only thing standing between them and chaos was a 12-ounce bottle. Even the label itself sounded like a prescription. But with the FDA's crackdown and lithium's abrupt disappearance, that strategy fizzled. The company's first step was to erase history, at least the part with the mood stabilizers. All references to lithiated anything were scrubbed from labels, ads, and promotional materials. Overnight, the product's miraculous side effects were replaced with a new promise: pure refreshment. Instead of marketing to your anxious mind or your jittery stomach, 7-Up was suddenly all about taste, clarity, and wholesome family fun. The visuals shifted, too. Out went the lab coats and scientific diagrams. In came backyard picnics, ball games, and families gathering in sunlit kitchens. Happy. Kids sipped soda through striped straws. Moms smiled from immaculate countertops. and dads were suddenly present, attentive, and not at all in need of mood stabilizers. "You like it, it likes you," the new slogan declared, as if the soda was just your friendly neighbor, no therapy required. It was a risky move, but it worked. 7-Up's bright green branding, crisp typeface, and sparkling clear color made it look clean, modern, and trustworthy. In a post-war America obsessed with freshness, purity, and clean living, the new look fit right in. Ads featured citrus slices, sparkling ice, and claims that the drink contained nothing artificial, a comforting statement considering what used to be in there. Now, 7-Up was positioned as the uncola, the fizzy, fun, innocent alternative to the caffeine and caramel coloring of the cola giants. This pivot wasn't just about hiding the past, it was about capturing a new market. Suddenly, 7-Up wasn't just for grown-ups trying to keep their nerves in check. It was for everyone. The company ran contests for kids, sponsored radio programs, and partnered with movie theaters. Drinking 7-Up became a social event, a staple at birthday parties, holiday dinners, and the new post-war phenomenon, the backyard barbecue. Without its chemical edge, 7-Up leaned heavily on lifestyle. You didn't drink it because you needed to calm down or feel better. You drank it because it was fun, festive, and, above all, normal. The era of health tonic sodas was over. The golden age of pure, bubbly refreshment had begun. Of course, there was still a little nostalgia for the old days, especially among older customers who insisted it used to do something for you. But for the next generation, 7-Up was simply the cool, clear one, a clean slate for family traditions and summer afternoons. Any memory of the drink's previous pharmaceutical ambitions quietly faded, replaced by fond recollections of cold bottles clinking together at picnics. In the end, the marketing pivot worked because it tapped into what Americans wanted most in the booming 1950s: simplicity, safety, and a good time. The product hadn't changed much, except for, the whole lithium thing, but the story did. And in the world of soft drinks, the story is half the flavor. So, next time you see a vintage 7-Up ad promising fun for the whole family, just remember, behind that wholesome smile is a history lesson in rebranding. Sometimes, the biggest change in a bottle isn't what's inside, but the story you tell about it. By the 1960s and 70s, America was ready for a new kind of cool. Gone were the days of soda fountains and soda jerks in paper hats. Enter a generation raised on rock and roll, bright colors, and the deep-seated belief that normal was overrated. It was the age of rebellion, against tradition, against stuffy brands, and, of course, against anything that felt like your parents' drink. Enter 7-Up's boldest rebrand yet, the Uncola. The Uncola campaign was pure marketing magic. It didn't just position 7-Up as different from Coke and Pepsi. It cast the drink as an outsider, an underdog, and an ally for anyone who didn't want to play by the rules. Instead of rich, syrupy cola, you got a soda that was clear, crisp, and citrusy, refreshing in both taste and attitude. The ads were trippy, playful, and unapologetically weird. Sliced limes floated in midair, bubbles danced in psychedelic patterns, and slogans challenged you to take a stand by sitting down with something totally new. Suddenly, drinking 7-Up wasn't just about thirst. It was a statement. "We are the Uncola," one ad declared, over a cascade of melting ice and swirling lemon slices. "You are not a follower. Why should your drink be?" The message resonated with teenagers and young adults tired of tradition and ready to question everything, right down to what went into their glass. The timing couldn't have been better. The post-war optimism of the 1950s had given way to a mood that was restless, experimental, and, thanks to TV and mass media, impossible to ignore. People were looking for ways to set themselves apart. They wore their hair longer, played their music louder, and, yes, drank their soda, greener and bubblier. 7-Up became a staple at dorm room parties, college rallies, and, later, outdoor music festivals, always in the hand of someone ready to be a little different. The Uncola ads poked fun at the seriousness of cola branding. No more somber, sepia-toned scenes of dinnertime perfection. Instead, 7-Up's campaigns exploded with color, humor, and a wink at convention. One famous TV spot showed a Caribbean man slicing limes and waxing poetic about Uncola nuts. Because, unlike cola, 7-Up contained no cola nut, no caffeine, and no need to take itself seriously. "We don't have a secret formula," the ads hinted. "We're not hiding anything. We're just bubbles." Citrus and fun. For families, the shift was liberating. No guilt, no lectures, no old-fashioned promises of health benefits or medicinal claims. It was just soda. You could pour it over a scoop of rainbow sherbet at a kid's birthday party, stir it into a summer punch, or sip it straight from the can at a backyard cookout. There was no wrong way to enjoy it. If you felt cool doing it, that was all the permission you needed. Of course, the magic of the Uncola era wasn't just about rebellion. It was about simplicity and honesty. A soda that made no health claims, carried no baggage, and let you have a little fun without feeling judged. 7-Up became a symbol of being true to yourself. Whether that meant going barefoot, painting your van, or just choosing something other than the obvious. It was groovy, it was guilt-free, and it made every day a little more refreshing. By the end of the 1970s, 7-Up had carved out its own space in American pop culture. No longer just the soda your grandparents remembered, it was the drink of the new generation, clear, crisp, and confidently different. So, next time you see a vintage Uncola ad, smile and raise your glass. For a little while, choosing 7-Up wasn't just a beverage choice, it was a gentle act of rebellion. And sometimes, breaking the rules is as easy as reaching for the green bottle in the fridge. As the years rolled by and America moved from the soda fountain to the convenience store aisle, something remarkable happened. The story of 7-Up's Lithium era faded quietly from the nation's memory. The collective amnesia was almost total. The same country that once handed out lemon-lime mood stabilizers to babies with their lunch now looked back on those decades as simpler times, blissfully unaware of just how scientifically enhanced their simplicity really was. In the 1950s and 60s, 7-Up had fully rebranded itself as wholesome and family-friendly. No one talked about lithiated lemon lime. Instead, it was the Uncola, the soda for cool, creative kids and backyard barbecues. Advertising campaigns washed away the past in waves of citrus, ice cubes, and grinning gap-toothed children. Most people never realized anything was missing. Except, perhaps, a certain sense of inexplicable calm. The old advertisements, once proud of their scientific flair, vanished into antique shops and dusty attics. If anyone stumbled across a magazine page boasting lithiated refreshment, it looked like a relic of another universe, quaint, almost laughable. The word itself lost all meaning, becoming as obsolete as velocipede or radium tonic. Even the taste of 7-Up, subtly changed after lithium's removal, was accepted without protest. It just tastes a bit different now. People would shrug, never suspecting it was their brain chemistry doing the reminiscing. What's fascinating is how total the rewrite was. Soda fountains, those old temples of chemistry and community, were replaced by vending machines. The ritual of gathering for a carefully poured glass was swapped for the clink of cans in a home refrigerator. As the delivery method changed, so did the memory. 7-Up was simply there, a soft drink among many, with a zesty, timeless flavor. For most Americans, its earlier pharmaceutical chapter was buried beneath layers of nostalgia and modern marketing. The loss of memory wasn't just about ingredients, it was about identity. The idea that medicine could come disguised as a treat, that wellness and whimsy could be bottled together, faded as the FDA and public health campaigns redrew the line between pharmacy and fun. By the 1970s, if you told someone their favorite soda used to contain a psychiatric drug, they'd laugh it off as an urban legend. Maybe in Europe, they'd joke. Not here. Of course, there were a few who remembered. Older pharmacists, collectors, or the occasional grandparent with a taste for the conspiratorial. At family gatherings, they'd recount how soda used to do something for you, and everyone else would roll their eyes, chalking it up to the myth-making of old age. After all, what's more American than selective memory, especially when it comes to comfort food and nostalgia? The cultural amnesia wasn't entirely accidental. Beverage companies had every incentive to let the past fade away. With every new ad campaign, the Lithium years slipped further into obscurity, replaced by bright packaging, fun mascots, and contests promising family vacations or new bicycles. Drink 7-Up and win sounded a lot better than drink 7-Up and stabilize your mood. The past was left to the archivists, the trivia buffs, and the rare historian piecing together America's soft drink saga. There's an old saying that taste is the sense most closely tied to memory. One sip of a childhood drink, and you're back in a sunlit kitchen, the linoleum cool beneath your feet, the fizz tickling your nose. But what if the flavor you're remembering isn't just about nostalgia? What if your brain is quietly craving something it once got with every lemon-lime bottle? A secret, soothing ingredient now lost to time. For a certain generation, the taste of 7-Up is like a half-remembered lullaby. Maybe you drank it at birthday parties, on summer afternoons, or when you were sick and your mum poured it over chipped ice. It was sweet, sharp, and somehow comforting, a flavor that seemed to reach deeper than just the tongue. And if you ever heard an older relative sigh, "It used to taste different," you probably shrugged it off as rose-tinted memory. But the science says they might be right. See, taste is more than molecules. It's chemistry and psychology, wrapped together in the folds of your mind. And for decades, when Americans drank 7-Up, they weren't just sipping sugar water, they were taking in a dose of lithium carbonate, a genuine mood stabilizer. The effect was subtle, barely noticeable in the moment, but for some people, it became part of the experience itself. Calm wasn't just a state of mind, it was a flavor note, a feeling that lingered alongside the citrus. When lithium quietly disappeared from the formula, something subtle shifted. The soda still bubbled, still zinged, but the therapeutic undertone was missing. For most, the change was unremarkable, just another tweak in a world of new recipes. But a handful of drinkers noticed. They insisted the drink had lost something, a certain je ne sais quoi, a mellowness, an aftertaste of contentment. It's not so far-fetched. The brain has its own way of tying flavors to feelings. That's why a whiff of cinnamon can make you feel cozy, or the smell of barbecue can make you homesick for a place you barely remember. When something as powerful as lithium was present, even in tiny amounts, the brain learned to associate that sip with a gentle sense of peace. Decades later, the association lingers. You take a drink and, for a split second, expect something deeper. When it doesn't come, the brain feels the loss. Psychologists call this a flavor hedonic memory, the way our minds tie flavors to emotions, moods, and even specific periods of our lives. For millions of Americans, the original 7-Up became a bottled comfort, its taste forever linked to the mellow undertone only lithium could provide. Long after the chemistry changed, the memory persisted, a kind of phantom flavor hiding in plain sight. As a result, modern drinkers sometimes find themselves searching for that old spark, that quiet joy they can't quite put their finger on. Some switch to other sodas, searching for a lost sensation. Others tinker with new calming drinks, hoping to rediscover what their childhood lemon-lime soda once delivered. The craving is real, even if its source is buried in the past. As the 20th century slipped into the 21st, America's relationship with soda got complicated. The original dream that happiness could be bottled, carbonated, and served over ice had changed. Where once there was lithium and innocence, now there was aspartame, sucralose, and a deep, fizzing nostalgia for something lost. The paradox was clear. In an age obsessed with wellness, the nation was drinking more soda than ever, but chasing comfort that always seemed just out of reach. Diet sodas were the new holy grail. After decades of sugar, the conversation shifted to calories and waistlines. People still wanted their lemon lime, their cola, their ginger ale, but without the guilt. Enter the zero-calorie revolution. Sleek cans, shiny labels, and promises that you could have all the flavor with none of the consequences. Ads featured aerobics classes, tennis whites, and cheerful joggers raising cans to living your best life. It was the soda industry's latest magic trick, bliss, but sugar-free. But something was missing. For all their zesty bubbles and bold branding, modern diet sodas offered only the illusion of comfort. No one ever drank a Diet 7-Up and sighed, "Ah, that's what I needed," the way their grandparents might have after a glass of the original lithium-laced stuff. The flavor was there, sure. The chill, the pop, the promise of refreshment. But the true spark was gone. People still reached for a cold can during moments of stress or celebration. But now, the effect was all psychological. A ritual, a memory, a tiny hope that this time, the fizz would fix everything. Science had caught up too. Nutritionists warned about artificial sweeteners. Studies popped up with headlines like, "Can soda kill you?" and "Is your diet drink making you sad?" For every bottle of guilt-free bliss, there was a cloud of doubt. Meanwhile, new wellness drinks tried to fill the gap. Beverages boasting vitamins, probiotics, antioxidants, or natural energy. They promised relaxation, energy, or mental clarity, and sometimes even all three in one can. The pendulum swung wildly between anxiety about what was in your drink and anxiety about what was missing. Yet the marketing stayed relentless. Zero sugar, zero guilt, 100% you. Modern soda ads offered the fantasy that you could have it all. Sweetness without sugar, pleasure without price, comfort without chemicals, except for the ones you can't pronounce. The product was stripped down, the calories counted, and the flavors reimagined as clean. But nobody was fooled. Not really. People drank their diet sodas, felt momentarily satisfied, and waited for a happiness that never quite bubbled up. Even nostalgia got rebranded. New sodas and craft mixers boasted old-fashioned fonts and retro packaging, promising to bring back the golden era of soda fountains, without any of the actual ingredients that made the original magic happen. It was like framing a photo of your grandparents' kitchen, then stocking your fridge with protein shakes and calling it vintage living. There's a certain genius in America's ability to sell hope in a bottle, and nowhere is this more obvious than in the transformation of 7-Up and its soda siblings. It's not just a story of science and sweetness. It's a tale of corporate alchemy, where a product born in the back room of a pharmacy became a multi-million-dollar symbol of refreshment, happiness, and, above all, possibility. Back in the early days, 7-Up was marketed as bib-label lithiated lemon-lime soda, a name that practically required a prescription pad just to pronounce. It wasn't unique in this regard. Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, Pepsi, all began life as medicinal elixirs peddled by pharmacists and hopeful entrepreneurs who believed, or at least pretended, that a few exotic ingredients and a dash of chemistry could cure anything from headaches to heartbreak. Medicine and marketing went hand in hand. If a drink could calm your nerves, settle your stomach, or give you energy, why not let the whole world know? This strategy wasn't just clever, it was essential. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were a chaotic time for health. Real medicine was hard to come by, and quack cures flourished. Soda companies realized that if you could put doctor recommended or healthful on the label, people would line up at the pharmacy counter. Every ad was a blend of scientific language and wishful thinking. Restores energy, relieves stress, for a cheerful disposition. It didn't matter if the evidence was paper, thin, or the side effects untested. The important thing was the promise. The idea that this drink could fix what ailed you. But as regulation crept in and public trust shifted, the soda industry pivoted. The genius of corporate alchemy was that it didn't require changing the product, just the story. As soon as the FDA started frowning on psychoactive additives and miraculous claims, soda companies changed the script. Now, the appeal wasn't about curing illness or chasing away melancholy. It was about fun, friendship, and a good time. Out went the medical claims, in came the lifestyle branding. The same bubbles, the same bright labels, but now the promise was refreshment and togetherness, not health. The rebranding was seamless. Vintage ads showed white-coated doctors and lab equipment. Modern ones showcased sun, dappled picnics, and children laughing in sprinklers. 7-Up went from scientifically formulated to the uncola, a symbol of independence, simplicity, and carefree fun. Every tweak in the story kept pace with changing times. The wellness craze, the diet revolution, even the rise of natural everything. The product didn't have to change much. It just needed a new myth to call home. Long before wellness became a trillion-dollar buzzword, it fizzed in a glass bottle behind the pharmacy counter. The story of 7-Up and the entire age of medicinal sodas is really a story about America's relentless quest for self-improvement. We wanted to feel better, be better, live better, and if that meant chasing health and happiness in a bubbly, lemon-lime tonic, well, so much the better. In the end, our thirst for wellness has always been as effervescent as our drinks. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, wellness wasn't about yoga studios or green smoothies. It was about bubbling elixirs that promised to clear your mind, calm your nerves, or soothe your digestion, sometimes all at once. Pharmacies were laboratories of hope. Behind those marble counters, soda jerks and pharmacists blended up concoctions as creative as any modern supplement stack. root beers for blood purification, sarsaparilla for vitality, cola for nervous exhaustion, and, of course, lithiated lemon lime for cheerful dispositions. There was genuine excitement around these drinks, a belief that every new bottle was a step closer to conquering life's miseries. The science was loose, the optimism tight. Ads promised the world, and people were happy to believe. A single sip could be an act of faith in the future, a trust in progress, and the magic of chemistry. It didn't matter if the wellness claims were aspirational. The point was hope, and a little psychological placebo, lightly carbonated, often did the trick. As the decades rolled on, wellness changed clothes. The miracle ingredients rotated, first lithium, then vitamins, then zero-calorie sweeteners, now adaptogens and probiotics. The marketing language grew slicker, but the core promise remained. Open this bottle, and you'll feel a little lighter, a little brighter, a little closer to the version of yourself you want to be. We're still chasing that dream today. Modern supermarket aisles are lined with functional beverages boasting everything from magnesium for calm to L-theanine for focus. The labels are cleaner, the claims more careful, and the FDA more watchful, but the hunger is the same. We want relief in a can, hope in a bottle, happiness you can drink between meetings. The flavors might change, but the desire is timeless. There's irony in how much today's wellness drinks resemble the tonics of the past. The names are new, but the pitch is ancient. A century ago, you trusted your soda jerk to fix your nerves. Now you trust your influencer, your nutritionist, or the branding on a can. We still hold the same questions. Will this help me sleep? Make me sharper? Keep me sane? Or at least keep me awake during a Zoom call? And just like before, the promise sometimes matters more than the product. The ritual, the crack of the can, the tingle of bubbles, the feeling of doing something good for yourself can be as comforting as the chemistry. We're not just hydrating, we're taking action. We're grabbing a little control in a chaotic world. By the time 7-Up was fully commercialized and lithium forgotten, America had sobered up, literally and metaphorically. But the dream of chemical happiness in a bottle never went away. It just got new packaging, fewer side effects, and better PR. Imagine the collective exhale as the nation transitioned from quietly medicated serenity to a new era of pure refreshment. The old soda fountains, once filled with gossip, flirtation, and the gentle haze of lithiated lemon lime, faded into nostalgia. Bottled calm was out, and bottled fun was in. The marketing machine pivoted hard. 7-Up and its fizzy competitors became the cool drinks for picnics, parties, and commercials starring perfectly coiffed families in chrome kitchens. The hush of mood stabilizers was replaced with the bright pop of summer afternoons and backyard barbecues. But if you listened closely, you could almost hear the country's collective nerves humming a little louder. This was the real hangover. It wasn't a splitting headache or a regretful morning after. It was the gradual realization that everyday life was now lived without a chemical edge. Tempers were just a bit shorter, the noise of daily stress a little sharper. People still sought comfort in their drinks, but now they had to work a bit harder for it. Some chased sugar highs, others upped their caffeine intake, and a few even tried their luck with the new wave of functional sodas promising wellness through vitamins, minerals, or mysterious plant extracts. The urge was the same. Sip something, and maybe life will feel a bit easier. What's funny is how quickly the nation pretended it had never happened. Lithium? In soda? Surely that was just a myth. A weird blip in beverage history. The story faded into trivia night questions and the odd article written by a nostalgic historian. The companies certainly didn't talk about it. Instead, they doubled down on innocence, green bottles, clear soda, cartoon mascots, and taglines about fun, not feelings. It was as if the country had collectively agreed to forget about its flirtation with pharmacy in favor of fizzy, guilt-free pleasure. But the craving for mood-boosting magic never really left. If you looked around, you could see it in the boom of coffee culture, espresso bars on every corner, energy drinks lined up in neon rows, vitamin waters and wellness shots, taking up more and more shelf space. Americans kept seeking a shortcut to happiness, a quick fix for life's relentless stress. And even as science and regulation tried to put the genie back in the bottle, new versions kept slipping out. Adaptogens, CBD seltzers, drinks with benefits. The packaging had changed, but the thirst was the same. At the same time, the innocence of the soda fountain era became the stuff of legend. Grandparents waxed poetic about nickel sodas, ice cream floats, and the miracle of bubbles on a hot day. They didn't always mention the lithium, of course. Instead, the story was about simpler times, about family, about a world that felt a little softer. Maybe it's easier to remember the sparkle and forget what made it shimmer. Before baristas and mixologists, there were soda jerks, cheerful teenagers in bow ties who were, unknowingly, microdosing the nation. Every pour of 7-Up was equal parts customer service and chemical distribution. You'd slide onto a chrome stool, order a refreshing pick-me-up, and 15 minutes later you were calmer, happier, and definitely humming. They didn't just serve soda, they prescribed serenity, with extra ice. The American soda fountain was more than a place for sweets and small talk. It was an accidental apothecary, and the soda jerk was its white-aproned, wisecracking pharmacist. Walk into any drugstore from the 1920s to the 1940s, and you'd be greeted by the sharp PST of carbonation, the clink of glass, and a symphony of casual chemistry. Behind the marble counter, a teen with slicked-back hair and a grin would be ready to listen, cheer you up, and slip you a little something special in your glass. No one called it medicine, but everyone knew it made the world seem just a bit more manageable. It's hard to overstate the influence of the soda jerk. In an age before therapists were common and wellness podcasts were even imaginable, these teenagers were the closest thing most people had to a counselor with a soda gun. Having a bad day? Try a lemon lime, the soda jerk would say, popping the cap on a bottle of 7-Up, pouring it over shaved ice, and sending you back out into the world just a touch more relaxed. Maybe it was the sugar, maybe the bubbles, or maybe, just maybe, the trace amount of lithium carbonate making life feel a little lighter. The soda jerk's toolkit was a treasure chest of strange and wonderful cures. Syrups of all colors and flavors lined the shelves, each promising a different kind of relief. Root beer for the heat, cherry phosphate for heartache, ginger ale for an upset stomach, and the ever-popular lithiated lemon lime for anything that ailed your nerves. A good soda jerk didn't just memorize recipes. He read the room. He could spot a weary parent, a lovesick teen, or an overworked office clerk from 10 feet away, and have the perfect glass waiting by the time they hit the counter. But the real magic wasn't just in the drinks, it was in the ritual. A customer would slide onto a stool, lay down a nickel, and the soda jerk would spring into action, scooping ice, pouring syrup, pulling levers, and finishing each creation with a flourish. It was part performance, part therapy. The soundscape was pure Americana. Fizzing bottles, laughter, gossip, the scrape of stools, and the constant click of the cash register. For many small towns, this was the true heart of Main Street. In the 1930s, mental health was something you whispered about, preferably behind a lace curtain. But a bubbly lemon-lime drink? Perfectly acceptable. 7-Up became therapy in a bottle, No couches, no copays, just carbonation. People didn't say they were anxious. They said they needed a drink, and it wasn't a martini. It was the self-care era before self-care was hashtagged, and everyone was a little too relaxed to question why. The world was different then. People didn't talk about emotional wellness. They didn't journal about their feelings or schedule appointments with therapists. They toughed it out, or pretended to, but life still weighed heavy. The Great Depression, job worries, family drama, and the pressure to keep it together at all costs. The word stress wasn't in daily conversation, but everyone felt it. What you did have was a soda fountain on every corner, a nickel in your pocket, and a society that believed a cheerful lemon-lime fizz could put the world right again. The ritual was its own kind of group therapy. You'd step out of the grey churn of daily life and into the bright, humming glow of the pharmacy. Maybe you'd sit at the counter, watch the soda jerk pull a cold bottle of 7-Up from the icebox, and listen to the fizz echo off tile and marble. For a moment, as you sipped, the world slowed down. The hiss of bubbles drowned out the noise of unpaid bills and untold worries. There was no need to explain or analyze. You just felt better. The soda did the heavy lifting, sometimes literally, given that it came with a gentle mood stabilizer mixed in. At home, the psychology of soda worked its quiet magic, too. When the kids were rowdy, or mom was on her last nerve, or dad had a tough day at the factory, the solution was often the same. Let's have a drink. Families would gather at the kitchen table, pour 7-Up over chipped ice, and the conversation, if there was any, turned softer. Arguments faded, complaints shrank, and even the dog seemed to chill out. Was it the sugar? The ritual? The trace of lithium carbonate? No one cared to ask. You felt better, and that was enough. Advertising campaigns of the time winked knowingly at this new emotional management. 7-Up was promoted as the drink for cheerful dispositions and restless nerves. Ads encouraged people to refresh your mood and enjoy a moment of peace, all without a hint of stigma or awkwardness. It was the only therapy you could buy at the corner store, no questions asked, no paperwork required. Of course, this pop psychology was unintentional. The beverage industry wasn't trying to run a countrywide mental health program. They were just chasing profit and marketing trends. But sometimes, an accident can change a nation's mood. In those nickel and dime years, when few could afford a real vacation or a day off, a cold soda was a brief escape. It gave everyone permission to pause, to sit, to breathe, to feel okay for a while. Fast forward to the 1950s, chrome kitchens, pastel refrigerators, and smiling housewives offering guests 7-Up with a wink that said, "Everything's fine." The lithium was gone, but the marketing buzz remained. The company leaned into the idea of calm domestic perfection, the soda that said, "You may be dead inside, but your bubbles are alive." It was the nuclear family's emotional support beverage. This was the era of the atomic family: mom, dad, 2 kids, and a dog, all living in split-level houses on streets with names like Oak Lane and Happy Valley Road. The world outside was full of Cold War jitters and suburban expansion, but inside, life was a pastel-hued performance of optimism. And at the heart of it all was the kitchen, that linoleum sanctuary, where 7-Up became as much a fixture as Tupperware and Jell-O salad. The aluminum age marked a shift in how Americans consumed their soft drinks. The glass bottles of yesteryear gave way to shiny, lightweight cans, an innovation that was as much about convenience as it was about the new, futuristic aesthetic. 7-Up's green cans, bright and cheerful, were stacked in every fridge and picnic cooler. With a flick of the wrist and a satisfying pop, anyone in the family could summon instant refreshment. No trip to the soda fountain required. But there was more than just convenience in that can. The 1950s housewife wasn't just serving a drink, she was serving a mood. The cheerful fizz of 7-Up was the soundtrack of domestic calm, a tool for smoothing the edges of dinner parties, children's tantrums, and afternoons that felt a little too long. The ads didn't mention lithium anymore, thank you, FDA. But they promised a different kind of magic: freshness, clarity, and a subtle assurance that if you kept the bubbles coming, life might stay just as tidy as your kitchen. The marketing leaned hard into this fantasy. Housewives were shown breezily uncapping a 7-Up. The kids clean and well-behaved. Dad looking relaxed in his armchair. The curtains billowing gently in the summer breeze. You like it, it likes you. The slogan chirped, as if to say, sure, the world might be terrifying, but this soda will keep your dinner table peaceful. The subtext was simple. You don't need therapy. You need a cold can and a smile. It's worth noting that in a decade obsessed with appearances, a little calm in a can was a welcome illusion. Underneath the pastel veneers and cheery slogans, there was plenty of stress. School drills for nuclear fallout, neighbors keeping score, and endless pressure to keep up with the Joneses. The 7-Up in the fridge was a secret weapon. If the baby was screaming, or Aunt Millie was judging your casserole, just pour everyone a glass, drop in some maraschino cherries, and let the bubbles do their thing. At least for a few minutes, everything really did feel fine. Even the act of sharing a soda was about more than just quenching thirst. It was about creating a moment, a break in the daily routine to clink glasses, share a laugh, or just sit quietly together. The aluminum age taught America that ritual and repetition could be their own kind of comfort, and that sometimes feeling fresh was just as important as being happy. When the Food and Drug Administration finally cracked down, America collectively sighed, and then got irritable again. Scientists pointed out that lithium might not be ideal in a children's drink, which was technically true, though deeply unpopular. The company quietly reformulated the recipe. And just like that, the nation's collective chill evaporated. It turns out regulation, while necessary, has terrible comedic timing. For years, the wild world of American soft drinks was like a carnival of chemistry. Every soda fountain was a test tube, and every soda jerk an amateur alchemist. The rules were loose, the flavors endless, and the health claims, frankly, unhinged. If it tasted good and made you feel better, nobody looked too closely at the ingredient list. You could walk into a pharmacy and order a bubbly concoction that contained caffeine, cocaine, lithium, or who knows what, and nobody batted an eye. It was all part of the fun, but progress marches on. And the 1940s brought a new age of scientific scrutiny. The FDA, once a small and mostly ignored government agency, suddenly had teeth and a keen interest in what the public was pouring into their glasses. Studies began to trickle in, whispering the dangers of long-term lithium consumption, especially for children and anyone with a less than indestructible kidney. The medical journals that once praised lithiated sodas now raised skeptical eyebrows. Maybe this isn't the best idea, they murmured, as America reluctantly put down its glass and started reading the fine print. For 7-Up and its competitors, the change came swiftly. Gone were the proud lithiated labels, replaced by a new recipe that looked and tasted much the same, but lacked the famous pharmacological punch. The ads pivoted. Out went the doctors and the health claims. In came sunshine, summer picnics, and the promise of pure refreshment. It was a rebranding masterclass. Don't mention what's missing, just turn up the sparkle. But America felt the difference, even if they couldn't quite name it. The collective serenity that once floated through soda fountains and dinner tables vanished. Tempers were a bit shorter, days a bit sharper. Suddenly, children were bouncing off the walls again, and parents were reaching for coffee instead of lemon lime for a quick pick-me-up. The soda still tasted good, but the afterglow was gone. For a brief, sparkling window, the beverage industry grumbled. The scientists and regulators were blamed for ruining everyone's fun. Why, they wondered, did the powers that be insist on taking away the magic just when things were going so well? Didn't the FDA know that the nation was at its most cheerful when every soda was a little science experiment? Of course, the answer was simple. The risks finally outweighed the rewards. The nation's accidental clinical trial had run its course, and regulation, however inconvenient, was here to stay. It was, in hindsight, probably for the best. But it's hard not to feel a pang of nostalgia for an era when wellness came with bubbles. And science and sizzle were equally important ingredients in the American dream. And now, nearly a century later, we're back where we started, only trendier. Modern wellness brands are proudly selling calming drinks infused with adaptogens, magnesium, and vibes. Swap the lab coats for influencers, the lithium for lavender, and you've basically reinvented 1930. The packaging is sleeker, the buzzwords more ethical, but the dream is the same. Serenity in a can, preferably sugar-free. Stroll through the beverage aisle of any upscale supermarket today, and you'll see rows of pastel cans promising a new age of tranquility. CBD seltzers claim to unwind your mind. Magnesium waters vow to help you chill without the crash. Mushroom elixirs promise focus and calm. And every can is photographed in the hand of a wellness guru with 1 million followers and a highly curated kitchen backdrop. It's a scene that would make any soda jerk from the 1930s do a double take. But only for a moment, before realizing the core pitch hasn't changed. Back then, the pharmacist was the authority, the soda jerk, the local confidant. Now, it's the social media influencer, a yoga teacher, a nutritionist, or a startup CEO, all promising that this next drink will finally make life a little less overwhelming. The science is still there, but it's got a fresh coat of marketing paint. Instead of clinical studies, we have testimonials. Instead of pharmaceutical claims, we have ancient wisdom and modern calm. It's all a little bit suspicious, but also undeniably alluring. The modern chill drink market is a gold rush, with companies racing to bottle comfort for the chronically stressed. People are busier than ever. The world is still loud and unpredictable, and the longing for instant, easy calm is evergreen. The main difference is that now, every ingredient is carefully scrutinized, FDA approved, or at least not banned, and listed in a tasteful font. But the emotional appeal is unchanged. Take a sip, and let the day's anxieties fade to gentle, carbonated murmur. You can almost hear the echoes. 100 years ago, anxious Americans reached for a lemon-lime soda, not knowing it contained just enough lithium to make the neighbor's barking dog seem less annoying. Today, you reach for a can of calm seltzer, and while the chemistry is different, the intent is exactly the same. Drink your way to balance. Let a beverage do the work your brain can't manage on its own. In both cases, you're buying hope, one bubbly swallow at a time. There's even a new kind of ritual to match the old one. Friends gather for sober happy hour, sipping CBD drinks instead of cocktails. Offices install kombucha and adaptogen bars. People debate the benefits of L-theanine and ashwagandha, the way their grandparents once argued over ginger versus lemon syrup. Even the word mocktail has gone from a joke to a whole subculture. built on the idea that you can relax, celebrate, and take the edge off without alcohol or prescription drugs. Just a can and a dream. Of course, skepticism is as fashionable as the beverages themselves. Social media is full of wellness critics, fact-checking labels, and reminding everyone that sometimes the only real active ingredient is the placebo effect. But even the skeptics line up to try the next thing, because hope is always in style. We want to believe that comfort comes in a can, that happiness is just a flavor away, and that the right bubbles might make everything easier, even if just for a moment. So the next time you grab a chill seltzer and wonder why it feels so familiar, remember, America has always loved its liquid peace. We started with lithium, moved through sugar, and now we're sipping CBD and adaptogens. Full circle, just fizzier. Serenity might be harder to find than it was in a 1930s pharmacy, but the dream endures, dressed up for the Instagram era, ready to offer a moment of quiet in a world that never stops bubbling. So tonight, as you sink deeper into your pillow, or whatever version of comfort capitalism hasn't yet marketed to you, take a slow breath. Because once upon a time, calm came in a glass bottle. It hissed when you opened it, sparkled under pharmacy lights, and promised to make your problems float away like carbonation.